in the book he explains that you have to say no to 90% of things. So there's a concept called hell yes or no. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So I feel that it goes against everything, I think, because I feel that the more you do, the better it is, the more experience you get, so that you can do next projects better or something like that. But what he suggests is you have to say no to 90% of the things and just say yes to the 10%. So I always wonder about what is, these people who write these books are extremely successful, right? They do not have problems, like they do not have let's say problems with finding projects. They just get projects because they have already reached that pinnacle, and they have option of selection, is what I feel. But for a person who is starting off, he or she does not have so many options, right? So how do you have the courage to say no in those situations? Or do you agree with the hell yes or no? And if yes, then how do you make yourself do that?
Okay. Yeah, good question. So you've touched on a lot of different things. You talked about comparison, competition, pressure to succeed, and the question of, can you say no to things even when you're starting out, and how do you deal with that? So for the whole comparison and competition aspect, I think most cultures have this thing where you are compared, there's high expectations of you, but I think in India it might be especially brutal because I've had some Indian clients who were students and who felt the pressure a lot. And here's one thing I learned. I work with a lot of CEOs, CTOs, entrepreneurs who made it. So I both work with students who are just starting out, and I work with people who have achieved some objective success, let's say. And what I find is that the people who look amazing from the outside, the CEOs, the successful people, they're still humans and they still struggle with things. So they still struggle with things like procrastination. They still struggle or feel like they're not doing enough and have time management things. They also have insecurities and self-doubt. They compare themselves to others. I have one client who has a digital agency that he built up from the ground that makes more than $1 million every year. And now he feels like that's not very much, because he could also have built something way bigger, because some of his successful friends have built things that are way bigger. And so all those psychological things like comparison, self-doubt, they apply to anyone and everyone. It's just that we just don't see it. And I mean, I can tell you two versions of how I got to where I am today, which is that I have worked on this business for 8 years while I was a student, and I made it a success to my own, definition, because I can live off of it. That was what I wanted to achieve. And, I'm doing something that I love. So that was what I wanted. That was my big goal for my 20s. And, I can tell you the parts of the story that are, and then I did this strategic thing and that got me clients. And then I did this great internship and that helped me understand I didn't want to be a therapist, or whatever part of the story that looks good. You can always tell a version of your story that sounds like you were just the most smart, incredible person on earth, and you wouldn't be lying because those things actually happened. But you can also share the parts of the story when you were terrified, when you felt like an absolute idiot, when you had an awful year because you just felt like nothing made any sense. And that would also be true. So that is something that I always keep in mind, kind of whenever people come to me and say, I'm only doing this much studying, or I'm only doing this much work every day. I feel like I'm the only idiot who doesn't figure out how to work more. I've worked with enough people to know that the other people also often don't, they're probably at a similar level. You're just not talking about it. So that's one thing that I find helpful whenever I go into a comparison trap. And then you also ask questions about, okay, if I have ambition and I want to build something up, how can I do that when I don't have opportunities thrown at me? And I feel like I just need to do more because otherwise I don't even stand a chance. So for that, I'd say the hell yes or no strategy is actually a really good one. And I've used this a lot in my business and in building my career, because the same thing is true for you and I as for the people who are $1 million CEOs. They only have 24 hours in the day. And I always think about, when I plan out my goals for the next few years, I always have kind of a bunch of different versions of how maybe I'd like my life to go, like a bunch of different career directions I'm interested in, a bunch of different places I could live. I like to keep those in mind and think about those and just explore what I like. But then I'm also very aware that I cannot live all those versions of my life, right? I cannot move to Amsterdam and, for example, become a copywriter on top of coaching, and also live in Stockholm and be a couples therapist. Like, those are just some of the things I find interesting. It's just literally not possible. Or if it was, probably only when I'm 40 or 50 and have had a lot of time to get the other things in my life on autopilot, so that I feel like I can take on another thing. And so I've heard really good advice from Jonathan Fields, the creator of the Good Life Project. He has a video on YouTube that is about how should you spend your 20s to be successful. And I think this applies to anyone who is in a transition phase. And he basically says, run a bunch of experiments and try a lot of different things to find the things you want to spend 10 years in to get successful. And I found that to be a very encouraging message, because it didn't say find one thing, spend your 10,000 hours of practice on that one thing, and if you choose the wrong thing, sad for you. And so this is what I always like to do with the hell yes thing. I like to ask myself, okay, is this an experimental job or an experimental project that is a hell yes for me? Because if it isn't, then I'm going in an okay direction, but I'm saying no to something else that I might absolutely love to spend my time on. And this applies whether people throw opportunities at you or not. And having this level of clarity about what a hell yes is for you, and you get better and better over the years with that, the more that you know yourself, the easier it is to say no to things, because you'll know how you like to spend your time. So I definitely would subscribe to that hell yes methodology.